The 2025 season is all wrapped up and done, which of course means one thing: war is over. 2026 marks a new dawn of Formula One since we will experience the biggest regulation change in Formula One history. Don't verify that, it's very likely wrong, but it is the biggest change since 2014, and with that, it carries some expectation. However, that's a different video for a later time. Instead of looking to the future, let's look at the past and present. Like mentioned before, the last huge change in the sport came in 2014 with the introduction of new engines and a revised chassis design. The engines, which were the bulk of the change, went from naturally aspirated V8s to turbocharged V6 hybrids, and the change naturally was met with tons of hate. So this new era was already met with loads of pessimism. However, who knows? Maybe this change can ignite the sport into becoming the undoubtable best sport in the planet's history. Wait, why am I making this video? Clearly, something went wrong, because if I was ranking the best era in F1 history, I'm sure constant good and perfect tiers would get boring fast. I mean, the second sentence in the video was literally "war is over." So let's go and check out what went wrong by briefly going through the 12 seasons under the turbo hybrid engines and ranking them. I'm going to channel my inner white guy and use a tier list for this one with 5 tiers: Mazepin, aka horrible tier, bad tier, mid tier, good tier, and of course the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, aka perfect tier. Relax, dark humor, it's called liberals. Also, before I have people in my comments saying how 2022 to 25 is technically called the ground effect era, the engines were still largely the same for 2014, so I'm just gonna count it as one big era. Plus, if I just rank the ground effect era, every year would be like mid tier except 2024, which isn't much higher anyways. If you have a problem with how I see it, then know that it is my video and I do not care. Sorry. Go join the Discord for some future surprises and subscribe if you're new if you're feeling jolly. So enough yapping and let's get to quacking.
A good weather for a race, but especially for a talk.
The first year of the turbo hybrid era was in 2014, and it saw some massive changes. The previous year, previous regulation period, saw Red Bull and Sebastian Vettel at the front, and if it weren't for Braun GP in 2009, it is likely they would have won every single title from it. 2014 would stop that streak, however, since it saw a new challenger rise to the front: Mercedes-AMG Petronas F1 team. Barn in hell. Their drivers Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg would get the blessing of all blessing for Formula One drivers, that being having the best car, more importantly, the most reliable car. I mean, they exploded often, yeah, but when new reg periods happen, especially engine changes, they blow the hell up. Mercedes were largely exempt from this, so add that with the fastest engine as well and a damn good chassis and aero package, and boom, uncontested winners. However, their drivers are no slouches. They stayed together all season long, leading to an inter-team drivers battle for the title. It all started off as fun and games with best buds Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg fighting for the title and having a grand old time. However, as the season progressed, they got more competitive and in turn more bitter at each other. By Monaco, you had the dirty tricks being used on each other, leading to Lewis later claiming he is not friends anymore with Nico. But my yowie. They would also have a crash in Spa where I'm sure it won't boil over more in the future. These conflicts would lead to some drivers seizing that opportunity, and by some, I mainly only mean one: Daniel Ricciardo, who in his first year at Red Bull was having the season of his life. Expectations were relatively low since everyone kind of knew Merc would be dominant, so Daniel, after a couple seasons at Toro Rosso, could lightly show what he has. However, no one expected Danny to take that car and not only win 3 races in it, but also not beat, but embarrass his teammate Seb Vettel, who was the current reigning 4-time champion. Imagine Yuki going into Red Bull and beating Max. It's almost like that. So think of it like this: when Merc won every race, they were either bad races or decent races, maybe a banger like Bahrain. However, when Danny won, it was almost always a decent race, leading to an alright 2014 season. If I had to be honest, I would put this season in mid-tier since it had a nice blend of good races here and there, but was kind of balanced out by the many monotonous races that Mercedes had won. However, it is top of mid-tier, and I expect that not to change much as we continue, which, by the way, we have the 2015 season now where it was again mostly the same. Merc was dominant, they won the title, but where it differed was that Rosberg wasn't as close to Lewis. Straight up, Lewis ran away with the title uncontested mostly, while Rosberg was always a distant enough second. He did have his race here and there, but Lewis kept his cool and consistently won races, leading to his 3rd F1 title. However, they still had their tussle here and there, with the most notable one being in COTA 2015, where the race started, Lewis shafted Nico and promptly won that race and title as well. Lewis being the little joker he is, saw Nico sad, so you know how he cheered him up? He tossed Nico a second place hat while Lewis put on his winner's cap. Lewis, you're one hilarious guy. Someone who was also enjoying the humor in this breakup was Sebastian Vettel, who after falling out with Red Bull, joined Ferrari with the goal of winning in red like his idol Michael Schumacher, and this partnership immediately got a great start with Seb winning in Malaysia and 2 more races throughout the entire season. Seb proved the dog was still in fact in him, and as long as Ferrari can come through with a title-winning car, I'm sure Seb will bring glory back to Maranello. Even further behind, Red Bull, after a great 2014 season with Danny Rick, fell off a cliff since they were genuinely upper midfield, and it didn't help that their replacement for Seb, Daniel Kvyat, while fast, had a knack for crashing. Also in the midfield, we had nice battles between Force India, Lotus, and Toro Rosso, with the main star being Toro Rosso, not because they came out on top, but because of one of their drivers. That year, they had 2 new drivers. One was Carlos Sainz, son of Sainz Sr. rallying legend, and Max Verstappen, you know, son of Jos Verstappen, the guy who lit himself on fire. Max was the real star of not only the team, but perhaps the season, since he showed mighty pace in a low-tier car, and the craziest part of all of this was that he was only 17 years old. He was by far the youngest driver ever, and this would kickstart a trend teams in the future would follow. Anyways, the season sucked. If I'm talking about the midfield this much, that's how you know it was bad, since we were really scraping the bottom of the barrel. So I'd give this season a bad tier, since little action happened, only minor moments, but man were they good. You made me laugh, good shit. But boy oh boy will that change for next year. 2016 is an infamous season, since here many moments would happen. Off of the back of 2015, Rosberg won the last 3 races in anger, losing to Lewis embarrassingly. Over the winter break, he made many changes to his game, to his mannerisms, and he lost all of his color and emotion. After being beaten by Lewis the past 2 years, Nico finally understood. So on top of those 3 races he won in 2015, he won the next 4 races in the beginning of 2016, making it 7 race wins in a row. And as we head to the Spanish Grand Prix, Lewis needed a response while Nico needed to be harder. So as the race starts, the drivers build an early advantage, and as they go through turn 3, Hamilton gets a run on Rosberg, Nico shuts the door, Lewis is on the grass, and bam, they are out of the race. This is Pandora's box for Red Bull and Ferrari, since they have a chance to win in what seems to be Mercedes' best season yet. So after a hard-fought race between the two, who wins? Max Verstappen. Huh? The 17-year-old kid? Well, now 18, and yes, he won the race, becoming F1's newest youngest race winner by a long shot, and in his debut race with Red Bull at that. Let's rewind. Max's 2015 season proved one thing. This kid has some big balls. Do not clip that. Red Bull were blessed with a gem, and they wanted any excuse to immediately bring him up to the main team. So after Kvyat hits Vettel in China and hits him again in Russia, Red Bull said, yeah, you're trash, goodbye. Talk about harsh. Anyways, Max got the call up and in Spain won his very first race with Red Bull after Mercedes killed themselves. Talk about foreshadowing. The next several races would be bloody heated. Monaco, Canada, and Baku saw simple races with one winning and one in the dumps, but Austria was back to business in every sense since the Mercs were in their own race and crashed again, kickstarting the true season. Every race it was battle after battle after battle, but Lewis held an advantage. He was still faster and better, and Nico knew if he had any real chance at winning, he needed a miracle. And then we arrive in Malaysia. Lewis was in the lead from the 2 Red Bulls behind, while Rosberg was in 4th, suffering after a turn 1 spin. And then on lap 41, so close to the end, Lewis smelled fire, and as he looked behind, his engine was blown up and out of the race. So while Red Bull won that race 1-2, Rosberg still took a huge 15-point chunk out of Lewis, and the tables have completely flipped now. Lewis needs to be perfect should he still win the title, but in Japan, he fails. He gets a bad start and only finishes in 3rd, while Nico wins again. 33 points back, 4 rounds left. It's all but over. Lewis wins the next 3 rounds and is down to 12 points to Nico, but unless a miracle happens, Nico can finish in the top 3 and still win it comfortably. So Lewis on pole gets a storming start and is dominating the race, but Nico is in 2nd and currently the title winner. Lewis then thinks, okay, I can't take him out because then I could get disqualified from the title, so what if someone else takes him out or even just overtakes him? He slows the pack down just enough for Seb and Max to be right on Nico's behind, but we're in Abu Dhabi, folks. Overtaking is impossible. impossible. So on the final lap, Lewis crosses the line to win the race with Nico in second, just enough for him to win the title by 5 points over Lewis. Want to know the cherry on top? Nico gets the one up on Lewis after his embarrassment in COTA 2015, since Nico straight up retires a couple days after his title, ensuring Lewis can never beat him again on track. The fanfics with these guys is through the roof. 2016 was fun, and while the racing could have been better, at least the drama between the two was so entertaining. This season goes into the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix tier. Argue with the wall. 2017 saw a minor regulation change. The cars being anti-racing needed a new change, so what was the solution? Make the cars bigger, obviously. Make them faster and bigger so that way they can close to each other better, and like every single soul expected, it was a massive sidestep at best. New reg periods at least mean competition can be closer, and one team thought, hey, let's give Mercedes a run for their money. That team being Ferrari. Australia was the first round, and it saw Seb on pole and winning that race firmly from Lewis. Mercedes were no slouches, however, since for the next few rounds, Seb and Lewis would fight for wins and alternate between them. Baku specifically was wild since people crashed some more, people overtook some more, and somehow Stroll was on the podium. Right. And despite some downs for Seb a little later on, he was still very much in it and at least can be very optimistic with Ferrari. But then Singapore. Lewis was down on the grid, Seb was on pole. This was the moment to take a chunk out and fight yet again, but they didn't even make it to the first turn. Lights out and Seb closes the gap to Max, but he can't move with Kimi already on his inside, leading to this iconic turn 1 crash. Seb was out, Lewis somehow won. Title was all but over, but surely Ferrari can't bounce back next season. So I give this year a good tier since it had decent action but lacked that little oomph in the middle part to be in the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix tier. So 2018, did Seb and Ferrari do better? Of course not. The season started the same with Seb winning. However, he did not have as good of a form he did at the beginning of 2017, but it was still good. However, all Lewis needs is one bad race and Seb could be back into it just like with Nico, but it's Ferrari. The opposite always happens. The German Grand Prix is infamous for many people citing it as the race that not only lost Seb the title, but his form in general. Basically, Lewis qualified in 14th and looked set for a terrible race while Seb was on pole. The race starts and Seb generally looks set to win it, but on lap 52, after a small rain shower forms, Seb gets wet and runs off the road into the wall and into retirement in literally all ways. And to rub even more salt on the wound, Lewis takes the lead and wins that race, all but sealing the title for him. The rest of the season was also pretty unremarkable since while yeah, he had some bangers, most of the races were fine. Like they're ones you'll watch, say you'll remember, and then forget just as quick. The midfield this year also surprisingly wasn't that amazing competition-wise, but there were some great stories such as Sauber with their new rookie driver, Charles Leclerc, who gives Max's 2015 rookie season a run for its money. He did so good, in fact, he got called up to Ferrari for 2019, so let's see if he can impress, which he absolutely has to. This year gets an upper mid tier for me. Like, sorry if I'm too woke for you, but I just personally don't remember nor think of it fondly. Wonder why. 2019 saw a minor regulation change. Front wings lost some downforce to promote more closer racing, and I would say it worked brilliantly. I mean, competitively, Mercedes ran away with the title since Lewis Hamilton would be completely untouched for this year, but it still had its good races, mainly due to one thing. Lewis was in his prime, I would say, since he was untouchable like I said, but his reign could come soon under threat. Lewis was 34 years old, which in F1 terms is up there in age. The next generation of drivers is not soon upon us, it is here. Remember how Charles needed to impress for his first year in red? Well, he got pole in his second ever race and was storming to win it. However, Ferrari. Regardless, countless other races like Canada, Austria, Britain, Spa, Monza, they all prove that should Charles be given the car, he could contend for the title. But the biggest thorn in Lewis's side was a certain Max Verstappen. Max was starting to enter a new stride, where he used to get into a crash here and there and just drive reckless at times. He was starting to be more calculated. He used his pace instead of his race ability, and it was translating well for him. 3 wins that year saw him third in the standings, and by now, well, yeah, we were still with Lewis, but Max and Charles will soon be the next guys to win titles, and many were anticipating for their time. Also, it wasn't just them. 2019 saw an influx of rookies like Lando Norris, George Russell, and Alex Albon. These new drivers were threatening the drivers of old, and in the case of Seb Vettel, they won. Charles finished ahead of Seb in the standings this year, and Seb maybe knew his time was up. Anyways, their racing this year was close for everybody not named Lewis Hamilton, and even then he wasn't excused all the time, so this year was pretty fun. This year goes into the upper good tier. 2020 time, and after some minor thing called a COVID-19 pandemic, don't know if you guys have ever heard about it, the season starts in Austria in July and has rounds in unorthodox places like Imola, the Nürburgring, Portimao, Mugello. Honestly, this is brilliant. So in the 17 race calendar, Lewis runs away again, even more than last year, since the W11 that year was a beautiful masterpiece driven by a beautiful driver. It was undeniably the best car ever made, and Lewis won masterfully in it to not only the title, but his 7th one at that. He's now statistically and arguably the GOAT of F1, and no one can deny that, except maybe for one. Max Verstappen. Max is now at a point where you give him a championship-worthy car and he will absolutely win the title. In that ultra-dominant year for Mercedes, Max was always right there, ensuring Merc couldn't just lay back and take it easy. Hell, sometimes Max just did them regardless, like in Britain and Abu Dhabi, since he saw their fastest car of all time and said, "That's cute." All Max needs is his own W11, and he could prove to the world that he can be in the top 5 ever in the sport. Further back in the midfield, oh my god, everyone was fast. McLaren took home podiums, Renault were able to be strong, Racing Point won a race with Checo, AlphaTauri fucking won a race with Gasly. It was great, man. Really, everybody was happy this season except for 2. Williams, who had Latifi and an abysmally slow car, but more notably Ferrari. I guess they were caught cheating last year. I guess that's a bad thing to do in the sport. I guess they got some repercussions that may or may not have been the reason why they were 6th in the constructors this year. The sport is lame. Charles had his moment here and there, while Seb, he was fired. Seb was exiting out of his prime, and Ferrari decided that he must go. And it's not like he did himself any favors with his driving this year, so yeah, yikes. Regardless, this season goes into the lower good tier, since with the cars so fast, they produced lots of dirty air which hindered the racing, but at least the vibes were peak. So it's time for 2021. We all know what happened. I mean, dude, the perfect tier is literally called the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix tier. Like, what more can be said? 2021 saw Max and Red Bull understand. Red Bull got a car that was title worthy, which of course means one thing: it's Max's time. Mercedes were also nerfed this year with another minor regulation change that saw many complex floor bits removed. This tightened the pack right up and allowed for Max Verstappen, the rookie, to challenge Lewis Hamilton, the GOAT. Race after race, it was blow after blow. They were literally equal to each other. So much so that after banger races in the season, they enter the final round in Abu Dhabi literally equal on points. And then that race happens where zero controversy went down and saw Max Verstappen beat Lewis to the title fair and square with no rule manipulation. This entire season goes into the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix tier, since truly, this may be the best season of F1 ever. My words will never do it justice, so please, go watch this season in full if you haven't. So 2022 time and the beginning of the ground effect era. This year saw another regulation change that reintroduced ground effects to the car. Basically, a whole lot of aero bits are under the car, allowing it to go faster. However, it seems there was an oversight, since the cars, I don't think they're supposed to do that. Teams throughout the season were able to circumvent this problem, except for Mercedes, who just couldn't figure it out. So the FIA forced all the teams to raise the heights on their car to avoid them hitting the ground. I mention this now because every race before that directive came out was so good. Bahrain, Jeddah, Spain, Monaco even. They were great, also thanks a large part to 2 drivers, Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. The future is now, since these 2 titans are now fighting at what the fuck happened. Basically, Ferrari happened. Whether it was engine DNFs or strategy error, it was back to back to back to back. So thanks to their incompetencies, Max was able to run away with the title for his 2nd one in his career thanks to zero controversy regarding finances. So as you can imagine, the season got boring quick. Director that ruined the car's only purpose, team that is so unbelievably shit, driver and team pairing that is so unbelievably good, there was little action to enjoy. This season goes into the mid tier, since that early bit and like 2 races after it is carrying so unbelievably much. 2023 goes into the Mazepin tier. Why, you ask? Well, aside from Max Verstappen winning 19 out of 23 races and Red Bull winning 22 out of 23 races, the cars just can't race each other. If they are in dirty air, the tires get shredded, and not like it matters since the dirty air produced is simply too heavy. It's so boring, man. Like, I don't know what else to say. I mean, Aston Martin in the beginning of the year were able to get podiums. Cool. Where's the racing though? Again, Mazepin tier. 2024 thankfully was so much better since at first Red Bull did run away, but McLaren were able to find pace and suddenly be right there with Max. Coincidentally, Red Bull's pace started going downhill with many personnel leaving because of it, and hold on, are we seeing competition again? Ferrari, even under new management, are able to compete occasionally with them, and Mercedes were also right there as well. 2024 surprisingly was pretty great, but I'm sure we know considering by this point I existed now as a channel, so go watch older videos to truly understand how good that season was. I'd give this year a mid tier since racing was nice, but still like that little extra oomph thanks to the big bad dirty air. And finally, 2025, 12 seasons later, bad tier. This year was so boring, man. It was crazy. Where Red Bull and Max were able to squeak out a title win last year and Ferrari were on the up, now I'm playing the services of Lewis Hamilton. You would think this year is more of 24, but nope. Red Bull are imploding, Ferrari decided to be ass because that's who they are, and McLaren got even faster. Despite there being a title fight between their two drivers, the team made sure it wouldn't be a repeat of 2016, which is boring, man. Let them want to kill each other. It's great. Instead, all we got was McLaren telling their drivers to be fair. Fuck off. Despite Max's late title charge, their racing was still ass, and the ground effect cars clearly failed in their objective. So again, bad tier since at least there was some title fight, and that was the turbo hybrid era in my opinion. So that was the ranking. It had its highs, it had its lows. Let's just pray that 90% of this new 2026 era can be high, specifically for Ferrari. Anyways, I want to give a quick shout out to all members of the vlog for the continued support. Make sure to join if you want cool benefits as well as just helping me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe since it really helps me out. Make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of this. And as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.